Good afternoon. Can we start the session? Welcome to this very interesting session. And I appreciate for the support of the President Kim of the Jeju Halla University, and also the speakers and discussants from China and Japan and also Korea. And this topic is very sexy, isn't it? Deglobalization and East Asian economic cooperation. Very interesting topic, and we have very renowned speakers from Korea, China, and Japan today. So we are very privileged and lucky to have such prominent scholars for this session. I'm Professor Jun. I'm the Vice President of the Jeju Halla University, which is organizing this session. As you remember, we are living in these days in a very political uncertainty and geopolitical risk. And one of the business magazine in US published a list of the most powerful countries in the world. The power means military, economic, and technological and cultural powers. And that's progress of the US. And they listed about 10 countries. Of course, Korea is one of them, but today I'm saying the top 5 countries are, as you know, US, and number 2, China, and number 3, Russia, and number 4, I guess, Germany, and number 5, it's one of the European country too, and I think it's UK. So they are the top power countries because the military-wise, economic-wise, and also the cultural-wise, they are the superpowers. But if you look at the relationship of these 5 countries, we see multiple conflicts. Between the number 1 US, number 2 China, they are still involved in the tariff war, which is really affecting the global trade and investment. And between the US and European countries, represented by the Germany and other EU countries, the relationship is very sour these days over the Iran issues. Okay, the relations between the US and NATO or US and EU is not as usual like before. The relation is a little bit disintegrated and alienated these days. And also among the 5 countries, the Russia versus the European countries over the the Ukraine war. So we see, we witness multiple conflict in many different regions, and as well as among these superpowers. That's the reality. So in that sense, what is the implication for East Asian countries, which is pretty much dominated by China, Japan, and Korea, and also the rest of the Southeast Asian countries? Maybe we have to develop some idea, reinvent some cooperation mechanism, at least among these 3 countries, especially Korea, Japan, and China, because these 3 countries are dominating the global manufacturing sector. Without these 3 countries, where are the semiconductors, the shipbuildings, steels, automobiles? That's all concentrated in among these 3 northeastern countries. So whatever in relationship, politically, economically, and culturally, we are destined to make some innovative cooperation among at least 3 of us in this global political turmoil, right? So I want to hear from the speakers and discussion today how we can cooperate, what to cooperate, this kind of ideas. So in that sense, I'm very much excited to listen to the ideas will be suggested by the main speakers as well as 3 discussants. So let me talk about a little bit about the management of this session because we have to finish in 80 minutes from now. So I will limit the presentation time of the main speaker up to 20 minutes. And then I will allocate 13 minutes for each discussant. So that will make around 60 minutes, 20 plus 40. And then I will allocate some time for the audience in the floor. So we'll have the Q&A sessions separately. And after that, I'll make the conclusion. So I'll finish up by 4:40. Okay, that's my role as chairperson. I used to be the chairperson for this session more than 10 years. So I'm a little bit expert in managing the time. So today I need the cooperation of the speakers. So let me start with our main speaker today, and Professor Kim So-young. And let me introduce him a little bit, and then I'll invite him to the podium, and then we'll have about 20 minutes. Professor Kim So-young, as you may know, is one of the most renowned scholars and professors in Korea in the financial economics and international finance. And he is also a very strong researcher and publishing many papers in the prestigious journals such as Journal of Monetary Economics and Journal of International Economics, which are very hard to get published, but he has been very successful in his academic publication. But he's very much renowned in as a policymaker. He worked for Korean government in different positions, like vice chairman of the Financial Services Commissions and chairperson of Securities and Futures Commissions. But I think that one of his major achievements was he tried to solve the problem of the bond market insecurity triggered by what we call Legoland default issues back in 2022. And he helped the government to solve, overcome these issues. And also, one of his very innovative contribution was the corporate, the value up program, which is try to overcome the Korea discount of many Korean, companies' stock price. So he's not simply a professor or researcher, but he has been heavily involved in Korean policymakers. So it's an honor and privilege to introduce him to our session. So please welcome Professor Kim So-young, an economist from Seoul National University.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much Chairperson, for very kind introduction. First, I would like to thank the organizer for the invitation to this great conference. Today, I'm going to talk about deglobalization and East Asian economic cooperation. And this is the content of my presentation. First, I will talk about international trade in goods and services. First, I will briefly mention the trend in globalization, and then more recent trend in deglobalization. Then we will briefly talk about strategic responses for Korea and East Asia. And the second part is about international trade in assets. First, I will briefly show the trend in financial globalization, and then move to East Asian cooperation from crisis defense to growth and macroeconomic resilience. Then let me start with the international trade in goods and services. And this is usual trade, trade in merchandise trade and trade in goods and services. And this is a historical graph on world trade as a share of GDP from 1970s. We can easily see that in 1990s and 2000s, the share increases very sharply. We may call this period as a globalization. Then after global financial crisis, you can see that we don't have this upward trend anymore. Then let me first recall the globalization period, roughly from 1990s to 2008. In this period, trade rose from about 40% to 60% of world GDP. There are three forces. First, institutions. WTO founded in 1995. And second, people and markets. China joined the WTO in 2001, and Eastern Europe reintegrated. And third, technology. Container shipping, fiber optics, ERP system, and all this technology help construct efficient global value chain. And with globalization, we found faster growth in emerging markets and low inflation in advanced countries. And then after global financial crisis, we found a slowdown in globalization. China rebalancing, rising protectionism, and slower productive growth, and all this contributed to the slowdown in globalization. And then from 2018, we may call this period as deglobalization. First, we found a tariff war. The US-China dispute started in 2018 and resumed again from 2025. And US tariff on Chinese imports rose from 40% to 6%. I'm sorry, this is the slide. Yeah. The U.S. tariff on Chinese imports rose from 3% to 90% during 2018 and 2019, and the cumulative level reached around 145% by 2025. And second, subsidy raise and industrial policy. Industrial policy has returned as scale. Nowadays, major economies are competing with these subsidies. Third, security drives trade. We find friend-shoring, in which we allocate critical supply to allies and partners, and de-risking, which is selective decoupling on critical sectors. So now efficiency yields to safety, and block formation accelerates. And nowadays, Korea and Asian region has a fundamental challenge. Previously, Korea and East Asia were growing very fast through trade with vertically integrated global value chains. In the picture in the bottom, China imported intermediate goods from other Asian countries, and then China assembled and export to advanced countries. And this is the traditional vertical global value chain that Asian countries have been using for several decades. But now the era of growing through trade has hit the ceiling. The first, costs are rising. Tariffs and regulations are raising transaction cost. And second, access is narrowing, Block formation is narrowing market reach. Third, logic changed. Security has displaced efficiency as the original principle. And still, Asian countries are promoting regional trade integration, and this is a FTA within Asia, signed and in effect. There are numerous overlapped arrangements, and these are FTA for some other countries. And this is a graph for exports and imports of goods and services of East Asia. So this shows the East Asian trend in international trade. You can see a very similar pattern. Up to 2008, we have a increase in global international trade. But after 2008, we find the trend is changing, and the share is now decreasing. And this is a regional portion of exports. How much of export we sell it to our own region. So you can see that the percentage is about 50%. It is growing from past, and nowadays it's around the 50%. But in very recent years, you can see that the numbers are slightly decreasing. And this is for regional import, and you can see that the patterns are very similar. About 50%, but decreasing nowadays. And this is export and import of Korea. The Korea has a very similar trend. So we have a very high, a rapid increase in international trade in the 1990s and 2000s. But in recent years, we have a decreasing trend. Then what should Korea and Asia do? Here I list some of potential strategic responses. First, diversify the FTA networks. We may reduce the concentration on a few dominant trading partners. And second, we may expand our service and digital service trade. IT, healthcare, and K contents are less affected by tariff and geographical fragments, so we may expand this sector. And third, we can pursue selective collaboration. Climate and tech-allied sectors may be a candidate with semiconductor and batteries. And fourth, repair the multilateral core. We can pursue plurilateral agreements on digital trade, environment, subsidy discipline as a complement to the multilateral framework. And finally, we can develop a new way of Asian cooperation. We can consider selective, multi-layered cooperation with low consensus costs and faster deliverables. And we can also consider horizontal cooperation across digital, climate, bio, semiconductors, digital minerals, and batteries. We can also consider supply chain resilience cooperation. Then let me move to the part 2, which is international trade in assets. So this is one of the most interesting facts about finance is financial globalization is still going. So we previously saw that trade integration is now somehow decreasing, but for the financial integration, we can see that even after global financial crisis, we have this trend increases further. In the graph, you can see that foreign asset and foreign liability as a share of GDP, the red line is average of 80 countries, and blue line is the number for Korea. again, you can see that the graph is increasing over time, even after global financial crisis. And then you can see that the number for Korea is a little bit smaller than, far smaller than world average, which means that we have more potential to be further integrated into the world in terms of finance. And this is a ratio for East Asia. We can find a similar trend. The numbers keep increasing. After global financial crisis, the numbers are slightly decreasing, but later, in more recent years, the number catches up. And this is a regional portion of portfolio investment. Compared to trade integration, previously we saw the regional trade integration, but the numbers are far smaller than trade. So the Asian regional integration in terms of finance is slightly less than 20%. So previously, the number for trade was of 50%, but still the numbers are increasing. And we can see that we invest a lot on the North America. And this is a graph for regional portion for liabilities. So regional numbers are slightly higher, up to 30%, but the patterns are very similar. Then let me briefly recall how we got here, how we got current financial integration. Many emerging countries started to remove their capital account restrictions from the 1990s. The background was as follows. Advanced countries experienced unprecedented economic success with the liberalized capital account in the early years of the post-Bretton Woods system. Based on this experience, they pressed emerging countries to liberalize capital account. Some emerging countries were reluctantly obliged to liberalize capital account. So at the time, we expect a lot of theoretical benefits. For example, efficient capital allocation, risk sharing, and faster growth. But instead of becoming successful, most emerging Asian countries encountered very serious problems, crisis, boom bust cycles, sudden stops, and elevated volatility. And then this is a capital inflow. So previously we saw the stock data. So how much asset and liabilities we accumulated up to that point. But this is flow data. So how much assets we purchase and sell in each year. And you can see that inflows surged in the early 1990s, but there was a reversal after Asian financial crisis. And then again it surged and then reversed around the global financial crisis period. So nowadays, many emerging Asian countries are worrying this type of cycles will continue. And then they will get the crisis again in the future. So this is outflows, and you can find a very similar graph. And this is so after Asian financial crisis, these countries, East Asian countries, are working together to prevent future crisis. So these are some of the East Asian financial cooperation. We have a CMI and CMIM, which is very similar to reserve pooling. We also have AMRO, which become a regional macroeconomic surveillance unit. And then ABMI is a regional bond market developments to reduce the double mismatch. So previously we are focusing on how to prevent our crisis, and now these crisis prevention tools are probably not sufficient. we have a theoretical, we have a lot of benefits from financial globalization. So nowadays we can shift toward growth, efficiency, and macroeconomic resilience in addition to crisis prevention. So here I list general opportunities from financial globalization. First, we can allocate capital efficiently across the region. And then risk diversification and macroeconomic stability and growth. By diversification, we can decrease the risk and then promote the risk. And finally, nowadays, some countries are interested in digital finance and fintech innovation. And this is another way that we may have a benefit from financial globalization. So this is a collaboration framework we may consider. So I'll go over quickly. So I have only two minutes. So first, we can deepen our ABMI, which is a local currency market. So we can if we can trade freely about the local currency across countries, then we can easily borrow and lend, and we can use our saving to help other Asian countries' investment and growth. And second, we can consider cross-border payment connectivity. And capital market connectivity is also important, and we can also have a harmonized financial regulation. So if all the country has different regulations, then it would be far more difficult to communicate with exchange assets with other countries. And finally, the macro-prudential coordination would be also important. For example, coordination for managing capital flow surges and reversals may be interesting. And there is another challenge for Asia and some other small open economies. Deepening financial globalization amplifies cross-border spillovers. So external financial conditions, for example, U.S. monetary policy, increasingly drive Asia's financial market and real economic conditions. And also our transmission channels and effectiveness of monetary policy become very weak, and dollar dominance remains a structural constraint. So potential policy responses are we can enhance macro-prudential coordination across the region. And also we try to use local currency settlements to reduce dollar dependence within the region. And finally, we may consider stronger regional safety nets. So to summarize, trade and finance have very different patterns. Trade is nowadays, we find the deglobalization in trade, but finance keep increasing. Financial integrations keep increasing. So somehow we have to think about how to respond to these two type of changes: trade deglobalization and finance globalization. So I suggest a few way of cooperation. Yeah. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your keeping time. Very punctual presentation. Thank you for helping us. And we found out that we learned from him that the traditional globalization has some hiccups in terms of international trade, but financial globalization is still going on. So he suggested what kind of new cooperation framework for the future, from the crisis-driven platform to more growth-oriented platforms. So that's very interesting insight. So let me invite three discussants. We have really a three-star discussion from the three different countries. So let me invite the gentleman from Japan and Professor Takashi TERADA, And he's very, famous not only in Japan but also in Singapore and in Korea. So he had very interesting relations with institutions, academic institutions in Korea in particular, and also in Singapore. He was a former professor at the Waseda University and also University of Singapore before joining the current job position, Doshisha University. And he's not economist, he's more or less a political scientist, and he's an expert in international political economy and also the politics of trade and investment. So let me invite him, and then maybe we can have his insight from the Japanese perspective. Thank you, and welcome him, please. So you have 13 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much for kind introduction, Mr. Chair. Very good afternoon. My name is Takashi TERADA. I'm teaching in a university based in Kyoto. We just celebrated 150th anniversary next year. So it's a relatively old university in Japan. And so I'm happy to be actually back to Cheju Forum. I invited to attend 2 sessions 9 years ago. So, but since then, a lot of changes happening. So absolutely, I needed to change something, what I already, talked 9 years ago, something like that. Of course, my role was to respond to the keynote speeches that are given just by the Professor Kim. But to be frank, some of them are nothing I could understand. But the probably 60% are quite similar to what I considered, even as a political scientist. But let me, before going to touching on the Professor Kim's speeches, one addition I want to say to the Professor Kim showed us the part 1. He actually gives us a quite beautifully written a list of free trade agreement or FTAs. And the bottom line, final line was RCEP. It's so-called the East Asian-wide FTA with 15 countries, 10 ASEAN members, Japan, China, South Korea, and Australia, New Zealand. India was part of it, but dropped, partly because India is concerned about China's more dominant economic export. So 15 countries FTA. But from Japanese perspective, there is another important framework called CPTPP, Comprehensive and Progressive Trade, CPTPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was initiated by Obama administration, partly to counter China's growing influence. And Japan was actually very last participant in 2013 under the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. But as you know, Trump got out of it. And there was a view in the world that, okay, TPP, at that time called just TPP, destiny was over. Even some said in the United States. But the government of Japan worked harder, even without the United States, took initiatives, probably first time in economic diplomacy of Japan since the Asian financial crisis, which also Professor Kim mentioned in 1997. At that time, Japan proposed abortive Asian monetary fund. But US and China were not happy with it. But instead, Chenma initiative, it's a bilateral swap agreement, currency swaps, right? And now it's CMIM, as Professor Kim mentioned, multilateralization. So it's not bilateral networks. It's just, the one, the cap. So only one decision for more, capital would be available So it's much similar to what Japan proposed in 1997 Asian Monetary Fund. And a surveillance system was created in Singapore, AMRO. So it's very similar to what the IMF has been doing it. But as you know, IMF is unpopular, maybe in this country, and also Thailand, and Indonesia, right? Mr. Kamadosh, head of the IMF at that time, just in a signing ceremony, he was just looking at, with this, the attitude, looking down the president's house of signing it. This was the cause of his end of 30-year presidency in Indonesia. So, that kind of economic corporations, even trade, finance, etc., has such a huge impact on politics too. If politics changed, if government changed, of course we needed to consider how the economic policy can be also changed. This is what I mentioned in the beginning. Okay, only one message I want to carry to the Professor Kim's address was how the private companies, which are also affected by such a global trend of economics, and also change of the government in any sort of the states. But they became quite significant. It's a very important source of economic growth. Say, in my country, Japan, recently the SK chairman, Mr. Choi, came to Tokyo 2 weeks ago, I think, and he promised to invest 200 billion yen together with the NVIDIA, American semiconductor companies, to create probably AI-oriented data center or AI factory, what Mr. Choi said. Again, it's nothing to do with the Japanese government. It's a purely decision by a foreign company targeting a foreign country. That would create more employment. That's also an important source of growth, as I mentioned. But I want to say, this is also a typical traditional approach of the foreign companies who carefully looking at the potential the growth of market. Microsoft came to Tokyo just 1 month ago when the China-US summit was held in Beijing. Well, of course, the US big company chairs like the Apples and NVIDIA and SpaceX and all came to Beijing. But Microsoft came to Tokyo also to promise to create the data center. This is very much important for any sort of the AI-oriented the activities. Also promised. But I want to say what happened, particularly in this century, Korea and Japan, particularly Japan, was so-called the emergence of industrial policy. What is industrial policy? Well, put it simply, it's a government intervention into the market economy. Particularly important stuff was, for the Japanese government, already spent the nearly 100 billion yen for inviting the number one semiconductor company, TSMC, from Taiwan. 2 factories already created in the Kumamoto prefecture. It's a quite rural areas. But Kumamoto is famous for producing very pure water. This is important and necessary for semiconductor production, as you know. But this time, it's not TSMC's own decision. It was invited by the Japanese government with government subsidies. This was formally criticized by some capitalist countries like United States. Okay, China is famous, or maybe infamous for America. So that's why I call it state capitalism. Government has been always there. China's companies are called, the state-owned enterprises, SOEs. That actually occupies nearly 40% of China's GDP. It's the main, the caterpillar of China's economic growth. But it's very, very lack of transparency. Where the money come from? Who is actually, the managing? What kind of background these people have, for example? I'm not criticizing this one. But, this state capitalism, a part of the element can be now expanded into to neighboring countries, Japan and South Korea. So I'm only talking about Japan because I'm from Japan. So any sort of economic cooperation, I think Mr. Kim's speech was excellent, but it tended to, probably he's in the government, tended to focus on the government-led institutions like CMIM, trade agreement, etc. But I think time is changing, probably to consider how such kind of the multilateral cooperation, corporates can be put into such kind of the government-led framework, as I mentioned. And government subsidies now available in Japan, particularly in such a key sectors like semiconductors, AI, etc. It's very selective in a sense. And it seems to me, also, Korea is also doing something similar. In Biden administration started doing it. That's why TSMC's factories now established in America with American budget. Germany is another country in Europe which was successfully invited the TSMC factories there. And from Taiwan's viewpoint, this is so-called, the silicon shield, right? To protect potential China's military attacks, just diversifying its production networks in some of the key countries, Japan, US, and Germany. And of course, from Korea-Japan cooperation, that could be probably core of such kind of CJK, what we call CJK, China-Japan-Korea cooperation. One other key element, China-Japan-Korea are geographically very, very close, proximate. I came from Kansai, Osaka Airport, to Cheju, or just 1 hour plus. To Beijing, maybe 1 hour plus, to maybe 2 hours plus. It's not difficult to move, even attending conference in Seoul and Beijing and Tokyo in one day, if you don't sleep well. But political cooperation, economic linkages, which are all affected by political problems, are very much thin. It's a very, very irony. 3 big economies in Asia hardly engaged in serious economic cooperation. FTA among 3 countries? Not at all. We have Korea-Japan FTA? No. Japan-Korea FTA? No. If you look at the Professor Kim's list of the bilateral FTAs, why? I think we have to think about this kind of trend by asking these simple questions. But I emphasize, the trend has been changing. Such kind of multilateral cooperation has been more freely, even with the government support, can invest a lot. That could be probably interesting starting point for us to more seriously consider about the government cooperation, as Professor Kim actually addressed. Finally, sorry, I don't use any PowerPoint. If you are interested in that, please have a look at that. But I just try to speak to the audiences. Some of them are students from Jeju or other Korean universities. Yes, it's your age. Which generation our ancestors failed, in a sense, to create the more robust, the government-led cooperation, unfortunately. But government and companies are now seriously looking at cooperate with each other, how it can be regionalized. And I think younger people who are joining such kind of industries now can capitalize on it. So just forget about what happened. So I'm not saying, I'm Japanese. I'm not saying history should be forgotten or something, right? And I'm not saying this. But the now young people, of course, you are not necessarily involved in history problems, myself. But from a Japanese viewpoint, just look at the future and how we can do something for government and corporate linkages, cooperation. I think this is what I want to say. And also, I'd like to ask the Professor Kim, how do you think about these kind of mechanisms can incorporate such kind of companies' perspectives? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We talked about a lot of the regional cooperation among the Eastern Asian countries, but he is pretty much emphasized the role of the private enterprises in this to make this cooperation feasible in the future. So we have to watch what would be the role of the private companies, such as in the current days, the SK Telecom, TSMC, and how they cooperate with the local government. Those are the issues. So one of the main players in the future will be the private sector companies. That's his new perspective to us. Okay, let me invite a gentleman from my old friend from China, Professor Yuan Tao from Nankai University. And as many of you know that he's a very prominent researcher in international trade. And in China, there is a very prestigious award called Anjaje International Trade Research Award. But our friend Yuan Tao received that award twice, not just one time. And Anjaje is a very famous Hong Kong businessman, and he's very patriot. And so he memorized his performance, accomplishments, and he set up Anjaje International Award, but he got two. And also the Yuan Tao worked for Jeju Halla University as the Chinese director of the Confucius Institute. So he has with us for 5 years in the past, and I'm glad to see you again today, and welcome Professor Yuan Tao. Please.
Thank you so much, Professor Jeong. Yeah. Today my topic is the area of fragmentation restructuring through cooperation. And firstly, we talk about the U.S. tariffs, President Trump's tariffs, reciprocal tariffs. 2 years ago, I was here, and some professor asked me if the Mr. Trump becomes the president, how about China and the U.S. Trade? I answered that time. I said that's okay because China and the U.S. the relationship, the trade relationship is very close. So how about it? We know that President Trump make very high tariffs to all the countries, not only China. But the Chinese get a very high tariff. Maybe the highest is more than 180%. But this is just in the Truth Social of the President Trump's social media. The real thing is that after the negotiation between two countries, the tariffs became very lower than the President Trump declared. And Chinese government have a policy that if President Trump give China a very high tariff, and Chinese government will declare the same high tariff to U.S. goods. This is very interesting. Because I think other countries did not like this. Just Chinese government did like this. At the same time, Chinese government also had a mechanism like flexible negotiation. That's why two countries can have a very good finishing about this tariff problem. And this is about other countries faced the reciprocal tariffs. And this is the trade situation about the two countries. From this table and this chart, we can see that US-China trade volume becomes smaller than before, but this number is still very huge. And this is the Chinese exports to the US, the same trend. The number became smaller, but still very huge. This is Chinese imports from the US, the same thing. And this is China's trade surplus. It's very interesting, still very huge. Also smaller than 2 years before. So this is the total thing. From here, we can see that also US government took many measures towards the Chinese exports. Two countries' economic relationship is still very close because this is maybe 20 or 40 years trade and economic cooperation, we can get this situation. And this is China's foreign trade towards around the world. From here, we can see also that China's total trade is still very huge. Of course, number one around the world. And the number is very huge. This is China's total export. We can see that in recent 3 years, become more and more. And this is China's total import from other countries around the world, still very huge. We know that from the President Trump and President Biden and then President Trump, these 3 terms, US-China trade relationship, we know that did not very good. But China's total import and export become more and very huge. And this is China's overall trade surplus. Last year, China became the first one who have the trade surplus more than $1 trillion US dollars. It's very huge. And that means Chinese trade competitiveness is very strong. Now, this is the whole thing. Second topic, I want to talk about cooperation. This is China-Korea total trade volume. We can see that still very, very huge. And from here, we can see in all the years, Korea have trade surplus with China. Some years, trade surplus very huge, some years a little small. But every year, Korea has trade surplus with China. That's a very good thing for Korea. Yeah. And China's exports to Korea, mainly ICs, computers, batteries, semiconductors, in recent years. And China's imports from Korea, we can see that also IC, memories, and computer parts. That's very important because China exports and imports ICs and computer parts. Very important thing. From here we can see. And this bubble chart, we can see that this is RCA index, reviewed comparative advantage index, shows that trade between China and Korea is highly concentrated in industries where both sides have a comparative advantage. In the year of 2024, trading these industries accounts for more than 60% of the total bilateral trade between China and Korea. some people worried about that. When China has comparative advantage and a competitive advantage in some high technological industries, this is not good for Korea. But from here, we can see that these two countries can cooperate. China has competitive advantage with the same industries with South Korea. These two countries still can cooperate because the world market is very huge. These two countries cooperate and we can sell goods to other countries around the world. That's very important. That's why China and Korea exports and imports the same highly technological goods. Reality is the Korean companies still cooperate with China. This is the examples. And two countries' leaders also believe that the open economy and the cooperate between countries, this is the best way for the country to develop. And this is Chinese leader and this Korea leader. That's all I want to share with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You are saving us 3 minutes. Thank you for your time. And even if despite the Trump administration's tariff issues, still China is doing well in terms of the total export and import. So Chinese trade volume is expanding, regardless of this the Trump issues. And also the cooperation between Korea and China is still going on. And so that is the good sign for two countries. Okay, let me invite a discussion from the Korean side. Professor John Sang-kyung, he has same last name with me, and he's a professor from the Hanyang University. And the Professor John is his research mostly research area ranges from the capital market, corporate governance, and IPO. So he's pretty much financial guy, and he has very strong academic leadership, serving as president of the Korea Financial Management Association, and also is working in many positions in the capacity of the advisory, positions for Korean Exchange, Financial Supervisory Service, and Korean Securities Depository, very important Korean financial institutions. He's working as advisors for all these Korean institutions. So please welcome Professor John from Hanyang University for his insightful discussions. You have 30 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction to me. Oh, I want to add some more words to second part of the Professor Kim's presentation. Basically, financialization and financial globalization. We know, what financialization has brought to this world. We know that everything is trading in financial market, and finance is no longer just a supporting function. Global financial assets reached $501 trillion, and this means that financial logic is spreading to all area of our economy. And financial globalization amplifies and internationalizes financialization. So those two trends are coming together, and they are intercorrelated and amplifies the financialization. So capital moves through global funds, ETFs, pension funds, and banks. And prices also move through exchange rates, bond yields, equity prices, and credit spread. So we know that financial logic is spreading faster, wider, and more deeply across national economies. Here, recent trend one, the first recent trend is that global finance is more sensitive to shocks. Non-bank investors now play in a much larger role in transmitting global financial conditions. Non-bank financial investor assets accounted for $256 trillion, or 51% of total global financial assets. And also we are observing that there is sudden cash flow reversals. Asian bond flows reversed from $10.9 billion of inflow in November 2025 to $7.6 billion of outflows in March 2026. So for Korea and East Asia, domestic stability is no longer determined only by domestic fundamentals. Another important trend, Asia remains resilient, but risks are rising. Asia remains resilient, but risk is all around us. These shocks do not stay in trade or commodity markets. They flow into exchange rates, capital markets, credit, and household balance sheets. So the issue here is not only growth itself, it is the quality and stability of growth and the global financial pressure. The third trend is state financialization. The state or the government is no longer only regulating finance. It is increasingly operating through financial market mechanism. So it's becoming a major player of finance. Governments manage public debt, pension funds, public funds, and infrastructure through market-based instruments. Global public debt surpassed $100 trillion. So public policy and financial markets are now deeply connected. The fourth trend is the financialization of intangible assets and big tech platforms. Corporate value is increasingly embedded in software, algorithms, platforms, brands, patents, and data. In the AI era, technology competition is also financing competition. AI hyperscalers could need $4.1 trillion in capex debt financing by 2030. So financialization is moving into data, platform, IP, and AI infrastructure. In this recent trend, we would get some opportunities and challenges together. Let me turn to opportunities first. The first opportunity is better financing through deeper capital markets. Firms can rely less on bank lending and more on equity, bonds, securitization, and private capital. The National Pension Services of Korea grew from 160 trillion won in 2005 to 1526 trillion at the end of I mean, at end of March 2026. So this creates a larger institutional base for market development. The second opportunity would be cross-border investment. Korea and East Asia can attract global investors through stronger governance, disclosure, market accessibility, and product innovation. Korea was included in World Government Bond Index, and it's a good example. It's expected to attract $50 to $60 billion of foreign inflows. So domestic financial reform becomes a regional competitiveness issue. The third opportunity is financial innovations. Tokenized financial assets could reach about $2 trillion by 2030, and AI can improve risk monitoring, fraud detection, and portfolio analytics. But innovation also creates opacity, leverage, herding behavior, and cyber risk, retail investor protection issues. So innovation is an opportunity only when transparency and risk governance keep pace. Now, let's turn to challenges and risk factors. Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. The first challenge. Let's move to the challenge. The first challenge is volatility and external vulnerability. Financial globalization gives economies access to global capital, but it also means they import global volatility. Capital flows can suddenly reverse, and this is particularly important for East Asia because the region is deeply integrated into global trade and finance. Second challenge. The second challenge is that finance is becoming more leveraged, digitalized, and geopolitical. Global debt rose from about $210 trillion a decade earlier. Now it's $346 trillion. Second, tokenization is turning real assets, art, private equity, and private credit into tradable financial products. The third, financial networks are increasingly used as geopolitical tools through sanctions, asset freezes, dollar clearing access, and de-dollarization efforts. So the challenge is not only market volatility, it is a changing infrastructure of financial itself. And the third challenge is short-termism against productive investment. Capital markets can improve. Capital markets can improve accountability and governance, but excessive focus on quarterly earnings, valuation multiples can reduce patience for long-term investment. This matters because East Asia's competitiveness depends on semiconductors, batteries, AI infrastructures, which demand long-term investment. And this slide summarizes the strategic implication. First, Korea and East Asia need to deepen markets carefully while strengthening transparency and investor protection. Second, they need to manage macro financial risk, including leverage, FX exposure, non-bank channels, and liquidity risk. Third, finance should be channeled to productivity, supporting innovation, infrastructure, climate transition, and long-term investment. East Asia Financial Cooperation has a defensive role. Chiang Mai Initiative, RFF, all those tools, financial globalization moves shocks faster, and financialization makes those shocks hit balance sheet more deeply. And the second part, regional cooperation also has a development role. ABFMI aim to deepen local currency bond market. East Asia local currency bond market reached $30 trillion, and these markets reduce excessive dollar funding dependence and provide long-term financing for infrastructure, technology, and industrial upgrading. So East Asian financial cooperation should be seen not only as a safety net, but also as the market building infrastructure. Yeah, that's my last slide. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, we learned from him the new opportunities and threats coming from the financialization or globalization in finance area. And I think his PPT is very, very well designed, and so we can easily understand what he's going to say just by looking at the slide. Thank you for your effort. Okay, let me invite all the speakers to the podium, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A. So the speakers in discussion, would you please step up to the podium and take a seat? And I'll open the floor for questions from the audience. And when you ask questions, please, please pick the specific speakers or discussant, okay? And ask questions in short and precise, okay? And then please introduce who you are, okay? That's the three rules. Tell me who you are, and then you pick the specific, choose specific speaker, and then make the question simple and concise, okay? So any gentlemen, ladies, any questions to these four prominent professors? No questions? Maybe Professor An, he may have one question, I guess. Okay, microphone, please. Microphone. Okay, to Professor An. Okay. Yes, please. Where are you going? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so pick any speakers, please. Yes, it's okay.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Well, first of all, I'm really grateful for very insightful presentation for keynote speaker as well as the commentators. First question, I think I would like to address to Professor Kim So-young. You mentioned that East Asian economy should reduce the dependence on dollar to encourage the settlement by local currency. I believe the settlement between China and a bunch of the ASEAN countries already conducted on the basis of the YUAN, and this is already going on, and perhaps Chinese driving to make it a YUAN an international key currency. So how do you see, I mean, is sufficient enough, or you still need to expand the settlement by yuan among the East Asian economies? And then second question is related to my colleague Yuan Tao. And, I think this important field for East Asian economic integration is that to look for a rule-based trading system despite current ongoing trade the fragmentation. So on this regard, I think this expansion of CPTPP is very critical, and also upgrading the RCEP is also very important. Well, China submitted application to CPTPP, and I would like to ask you, what China's position is still to pursue the CPTPP membership, although the entry criteria is very strict, especially after admission of the UK in the CPTPP. Okay?
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps Kim?
Thank you very much for the very good question. So basically, it's very good to use of some other currencies than US dollar in Asian regions, and you mentioned the like trade settlements in the yuan, and I think one basic problem of the yuan is China has a capital control. So somehow dollar and yuan cannot compete, because suppose you have a US dollar, then you can invest in all the US stocks and many other places. But suppose we have a Chinese yuan, then it's very hard to use it. So I think the issue is not really how much percentage we have to use it as a settlement, but rather if we use it yuan, then the private sectors will like it or not. Suppose I receive the yuan, then I don't need to, I cannot use it anymore. So somehow I think yuan is have a very big potential, but somehow Chinese government have to a little bit more to use the yuan as a really international currency. China really have to open up the capital market. Otherwise, I think the usage of yuan is very limited, and it cannot really settle down the issue of dollar dominance. Yeah.
Thank you. Professor, you have 1 minute.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your question. Chinese government still and very want China still to open economy, and Chinese people also believe that the open economy is most important for China and for China's economy. That's the real situation. And China want to be the member of CPTPP. In the government report every year, the Prime Minister always said about that. This is the government's attitude. So I think the real thing is that maybe there are some problem to be the member of the CPTPP. And I think we can work harder. That's okay. So this is the first one. And I think the open economy also include the financial opening. So we talk about the RMB, yuan globalization. In fact, not only in the traditional globalization or traditional globalization of RMB, today China has the central bank digital currency. That means CBDC, I think. Yeah, the central bank digital currency. As I know that U.S. government did not do like that. Chinese central bank have this official digital currency, and Chinese government make bridge with other countries, like countries who have very much oil, Arab countries. There are system about CBDC, and the Chinese government also make this CBDC to be used in other countries like One Belt countries. We have the One Belt and One Road initiative. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry that I didn't have a chance to give the other speakers to speak, to make some comments, but the time is up. So please give a big hands to all the speakers and discussants for today. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you all the audience. Okay. So this will be the conclusion of this forum. Thank you so much.